It was an ordinary morning in Mumbai. Soft rays of sunlight slipped through the window of a second-floor room in one of the city's old neighborhoods. Mr. Sharma, 72, had lived alone since his wife passed away from cancer several years ago. Like every morning for the past 10 years, he woke early, did a few gentle yoga stretches, and retreated to his private room in search of a familiar sensation, a habit he had always considered harmless, silent, solitary masturbation. At an age when many have surrendered to resignation, Mr. Sharma still longed to feel alive and emotionally connected. But that morning, something changed. His heart pounded rapidly, his head spun. He tried to rise, but his legs gave way. Minutes later, he collapsed onto the floor. A neighbor called for help, but by the time the ambulance from Anteri Hospital arrived, he was gone. The doctors declared it acute heart failure. But beneath that cold medical term lay a quieter, overlooked trigger, a morning ritual masturbation in a vulnerable state, with an unready body, an empty stomach, dehydration, and complete isolation. Mr. Sharma's story is not unique. In India, where many elderly people live alone and lack proper education on sexual wellness, these risks are often ignored. And the silence that cloaks these sensitive subjects leaves countless older men unsure where the line lies between what is natural and what is dangerous. It's time we opened an honest conversation, not to judge, but to save lives that are quietly slipping away in the shadows. In India, especially in bustling cities like Delhi, Mumbai, or Bangalore, mornings begin early. Temple bells ring in the distance, the hum of chants fills the air, and elderly men often rise at 4 a.m. to perform breathing exercises like pranayama or take a slow stroll around the park. But behind that rhythm of peace and ritual lies a quiet habit that few dare to speak of: morning masturbation, particularly among older men. Mr. Rajiv, 68, from Pune, is a familiar example. Every morning at 5 a.m., he sips the masala tea his wife leaves ready, then retreats into a private room. "It reminds me I'm still alive, still a man," he once confided to his doctor. But lately, he admitted something else. He's been feeling dizzy, lightheaded, and breathless afterward. He blamed it on aging. The truth, however, ran deeper. Masturbating on an empty stomach, in a dehydrated state, and before the body has awakened, is one of the most overlooked yet dangerous mistakes older men can make. During sleep, the human body enters a state of total rest. Blood circulation slows, blood pressure drops, glucose levels decrease, and the nervous system is not yet primed for intense stimulation. While younger bodies can bounce back quickly, after 60, such acts can become a physiological trap. In India's rural regions, particularly the dry and arid zones of Rajasthan or Gujarat, waking up dehydrated is extremely common. Many seniors feel thirsty and dry-mouthed after sleep, yet they skip hydration and head straight to the bathroom to follow long-held routines, unaware that one poorly timed action can have severe consequences. Morning masturbation without first replenishing fluids or nutrients forces the heart into sudden action. Blood rushes to the pelvic region, causing an abrupt imbalance in circulation. This can lead to insufficient blood flow to the brain, rapid drops in blood pressure, and potentially fainting, mild strokes, or heart attacks. At a hospital in Chennai, Dr. Anand, a geriatric specialist, once treated a 70-year-old man who collapsed and hit his head in the bathroom one morning. At first, the family assumed it was age-related hypotension. But after deeper questioning, The truth emerged: he had a morning habit of relieving himself right after waking up with no water or food intake. The final conclusion: the combination of dehydration, glucose deficiency, and a sudden spike in heart rate caused a fainting episode, leading to the dangerous fall. What's more alarming is the silence. In India, speaking about sexuality in older age remains taboo. Even in modern households, parents and children rarely discuss intimacy after 60. Meanwhile, countless elderly men live in loneliness, feeling guilty for having desires, engaging in silent sexual acts with no guidance, no support, and no understanding of the risks they silently face. Ancient Indian medicine, Ayurveda, offers a remarkable insight. Texts like the Karaka Samhita emphasize brahmacharya, sexual moderation, as a key to preserving vital energy and balance. But this doesn't imply suppression. Instead, it's a call for mindfulness, to act in rhythm with the body, not against it. The solution is both simple and transformative. Never begin your day with sexual activity without preparing the body. Start with a warm glass of water, a deeply ingrained Indian tradition. Lemon water, ginger tea, or even plain lukewarm water can gently awaken your system. Follow that with light stretching or a few rounds of Surya Namaskar, Sunday salutation. If possible, eat something small like a banana or soaked almonds to provide glucose for the heart and brain. And most importantly, listen to your body. Fatigue, dizziness, or shortness of breath after intimacy is not just age, it's a signal. For those with conditions like hypertension, diabetes, or heart disease, these signals are not optional, they're warnings. Masturbation is not wrong, and it is certainly not shameful in old age. But doing it when the body is unprepared, especially early in the morning, on an empty stomach, with constricted blood vessels, can become a hidden trap, stealing health, and in some tragic cases, life itself. As Mr. Rajiv said after adjusting his routine, "I didn't give it up, I just changed the way I begin. I choose to honor my body before I pursue pleasure." And once he began hydrating, eating lightly, and moving his body before engaging in private moments, the dizziness vanished. He even noticed something profound. When the body is respected, pleasure becomes deeper, steadier, and far more fulfilling. In a quiet neighborhood near Pune, Mr. Arvind, a 68-year-old retired government officer, wakes up each morning before the sun fully rises. His wife passed away early in their marriage. His children now live abroad. The once bustling house is now silent, inhabited only by him and his closest companion in these lonely years, his smartphone. Each morning, before even getting out of bed, he taps into a familiar app. Not the news, not greetings from old friends, but pornographic videos, fast-moving images, loud sounds, intense stimulation. Just to start the day, he tells himself. But what Mr. Arvind doesn't realize is this. He is reprogramming his brain in ways that will slowly cost him his connection to himself, to others, and to genuine intimacy. The problem isn't the viewing itself, it's the timing and the repetition. Many elderly men in India are falling into a subtle trap set by modern technology, free access, instant gratification, and endless novelty. But the price is steep, and it accumulates in silence. The brain is most sensitive in the morning. Having just emerged from deep rest, the nervous system is raw, unguarded, and highly impressionable. When bombarded with explicit images at this moment, the dopamine system, the neurotransmitter responsible for pleasure and motivation, gets overloaded. Over time, the brain becomes numb to natural joy. A real-life touch no longer sparks emotion. A loving glance, a tender word, loses its meaning. In cities like Delhi, Kolkata, and Bengaluru, a growing number of men in their 60-second and 70-second privately admit they no longer feel drawn to their spouses or no longer feel anything during intimacy. But rather than explore deeper causes, they blame age, hormones, or just the way life is. The truth is more alarming. Their morning porn habits are rewiring the brain, dulling its sensitivity, and eroding their emotional palate. From dopamine to despair, an unnoticed domino effect. In rural regions like Uttar Pradesh or Bihar, where internet access has now reached even the smallest villages, older men often live in quiet isolation. Their smartphones become portals into a new world, yet too often they get lost inside. Daily morning porn consumption reduces sensitivity to natural stimuli. Worse, it creates a cycle of dependency. The viewer begins to crave stronger, more explicit material to feel the same rush. What once satisfied now feels flat. The thrill fades, but the urge intensifies. And what's lost in the process? Real-life connection. Marriages turn cold. Emotional intimacy breaks down. Loneliness deepens even when one is lying next to a partner. Spirituality and inner conflict in the Indian psyche. India's cultural fabric cannot be ignored. Many older men were raised in environments where sex was taboo or strictly confined within marriage. So after losing a spouse or enduring a strained relationship, they have no framework to process their natural desires except solitary habits, often cloaked in shame. This trio, guilt, artificial pleasure, and misinformation, puts the brain in a state of internal conflict. The sympathetic nervous system goes into overdrive. The heart races, blood pressure rises, and a subtle but persistent anxiety takes hold. Over time, this doesn't just damage emotional well-being, it puts real strain on cardiovascular and neurological health. The solution isn't abstinence, it's conscious change. Top urologists in New Delhi are clear. Masturbation doesn't need to be abandoned, but timing, intention, and mindfulness matter, especially in the morning hours. Instead, consider this. Begin your day with light yoga or meditation, deeply rooted in accessible traditions in India. Drink a warm glass of turmeric water, an Ayurvedic habit known to calm nerves and enhance circulation. Reconnect with your spirit. Read Urdu poetry, listen to bhajans, or simply stand on your balcony and absorb the golden hush of morning. These rituals gently reset your nervous system and prepare your mind with peace, not pressure. If the need for release remains, wait until afternoon or evening when hormone levels rise again and you're emotionally grounded, not driven by early morning emptiness. In the end, don't let your phone dictate your emotional blueprint. After many sessions and small changes, Mr. Arvind said something quietly powerful. I didn't know what I truly needed in the morning until I stopped feeding myself the wrong things. Lee www. Now, he starts his days walking in the park with an old friend, talking, laughing, reconnecting, and slowly, his mind has begun to heal. What you do each morning doesn't just shape your body, it sculpts your soul. Choose the habit that makes you come alive, not the one that quietly makes you disappear. In the narrow alleys of Chennai, where morning temple bells echo through the air mingled with the scent of burning incense, Mr. Rajan, a 6'8" man, has spent nearly his entire life in a small room tucked behind his family's humble chai stall. His days were shaped by duty, discipline, and devotion to tradition. Yet there is one truth he has never spoken aloud, the hollow ache that visits him each morning just after the chapel bell across the street falls silent. That's when he retreats into his own ritual, a private, wordless moment of release he never learned from anyone, but somehow always knew. For years, he only knew one way, sitting hunched at the edge of his bed, leaning forward, elbows on knees, his body clenched as if bracing not only against shame, but against the weight of solitude. A position so tense, so unnatural, it never occurred to him it could be the very thing that was quietly stealing his vitality. What Mr. Rajan didn't know, and what millions of Indian men over 60 also don't know, is that this posture, repeated silently day after day, may be slowly stripping away their sexual health, nerve by nerve, inch by inch. When one sits in a hunched, compressed posture, especially under tension during masturbation, the body exerts heavy pressure on the perineum, the base of the pelvic floor where vital nerves and arteries reside. Chief among them, the pudendal nerve and the internal iliac artery, key players in the blood flow and sensory response of the genitals. Repeated compression in this area can impede circulation, overstimulate nerves, and lead to numbness, loss of sensitivity, delayed ejaculation, and in some cases, complete sexual disconnection. Many older patients in Delhi and Kolkata have described feeling less and less over the years, assuming it's just the nature of aging. But not once, neither from general physicians nor from traditional healers, had they heard that something as simple as changing posture could make all the difference. This problem becomes even more pronounced in India due to cultural silence. In a society where sex, especially for the elderly, is still shrouded in taboo, learning about one's own sexual health is considered unnecessary or even shameful. Men over 60, like Mr. Rajan, have no one to ask, no trusted channel to learn from. They cling to old habits in the dark, until one day, the consequences show up without warning. I once met a retired school teacher in Pune, 70 years old, who confessed to experiencing numbness in his genitals for over 6 months so severe he became afraid to urinate. All medical tests came back normal. But when I asked about his morning routine, he shared that he often masturbated in a cramped bathroom, seated on a broken wooden stool, hunched forward for 15 minutes. Once I guided him to try lying on his back, placing a small pillow under his hips to keep the pelvic floor open, his symptoms vanished within weeks. He wept not out of pain, but for the 20 years he'd suffered needlessly, never knowing something so simple could change everything. After 60, a man's body no longer recovers like it once did. Even minor strain can result in nerve damage or pelvic muscle atrophy. And when those muscles weaken, it's not just erections that suffer. Urinary leakage, rectal prolapse, and diminished sexual confidence soon follow. In Indian culture, where men are taught to ignore these signs or treat them as women's issues, such symptoms are often endured in silence, eroding dignity from within. What's heartbreaking is that with just a little knowledge, everything could be different. In the men's health seminars I run across cities like Ahmedabad and Lucknow, I emphasize one truth: posture is power. It's not about convenience or comfort, it's about survival. The way you position your body affects blood flow, nerve function, and long-term sexual safety. I teach men to lie flat, with a rolled towel under the hips, legs relaxed, shoulders open, eyes closed, letting go of tension and shame. Some chuckle nervously at first, but after a few sessions, they come back with spark in their eyes. No more back pain. I feel young again. It reminded me of being 20. Of all the silent errors older Indian men make as they step into the dusk of life, perhaps none is as dangerous and as overlooked as masturbating in the wrong posture. It's invisible, it's easy to dismiss, but it directly strikes at the heart of a man's pride and sense of vitality. And yet it's the easiest mistake to fix if only one has the courage to change. So if you are a man over 60, living anywhere on this sacred land from the dusty villages of Uttar Pradesh to the high-rises of Bangalore, remember this. The posture you choose each morning doesn't just shape your pleasure. It determines your nerves, your blood flow, and your quiet sense of confidence. And if you've ever thought, I'm just getting old, perhaps it's time to stop blaming age. Try treating your body with more care, with smarter choices, softer movements. And then, listen closely. Your body might surprise you with what it's been trying to say all along. There is something few dare to speak of, especially within the walls of traditional Indian homes: the guilt and shame that lingers after masturbation. For many older men across cities like Varanasi, Kolkata, and the rural stretches of Rajasthan, the act of self-pleasure isn't merely frowned upon, it is seen as impure, sinful, even a betrayal of spiritual values. These ideas, planted deep during adolescence, have taken root in their subconscious, transforming a natural biological function into a silent wound of the soul. Mr. Rajiv, 68, once a Hindi teacher at a secondary school in Pune, shared in a counseling session, "I was raised to believe that if a man touched himself, God would turn away from him. I don't believe that anymore, but every time I finish, I still hear a voice whispering, 'You're weak, you're wrong.'" That feeling is not just a passing pang of regret. It triggers a cascade of biological responses, the most dangerous of which is a spike in cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. Cortisol doesn't just weigh on the mind. When it rises early in the day, precisely when many men choose to masturbate, it unleashes a chain of harmful effects. Elevated blood pressure, reduced testosterone, impaired short-term memory, and a suppressed immune system. That's why many men don't feel relaxed or uplifted afterward. Instead, they feel drained, irritable, heavy, or sad for the rest of the day. But they don't connect the dots. They blame their age, the weather, or simply a bad mood. Indian culture, with its deep-rooted silence around sexuality, amplifies this problem. In many Hindu families, sexual topics are shrouded in avoidance. Boys grow up without learning the difference between healthy sexuality and harmful behavior. And unless they're exposed to modern medical knowledge, many men still cling to the ancient belief that masturbation drains vital life energy, ojas, a misinterpretation of Ayurvedic philosophy. While Ayurveda offers many valuable insights, distorted ideas around sexual energy have left generations of men believing that ejaculation outside of marital intimacy is inherently wrong. And so, shame becomes silence. No one talks, no one asks. Men like Mr. Rajiv, Mr. Sharma, and millions of others fall into a private cycle. They wake up, feel lonely, seek a spark of aliveness, then drown in self-disgust. Over time, this pattern erodes self-esteem, lowers sex hormone levels, and weakens emotional bonds in intimate relationships. Some give up pleasure altogether, even with their spouses. They don't realize that this withdrawal can be even more damaging to their vitality, because no matter your age, you still deserve to feel, to connect, to inhabit your body. Sexuality is not the enemy, but when it's wrapped in guilt, it becomes a source of ongoing stress for the nervous system. I once worked with a man in Hyderabad named Vikram, a 66-year-old retired engineer. He hadn't been intimate with his wife in 4 years, not because of physical issues, but because he felt too old, too dirty, no longer worthy of her. As we unraveled his emotional history, He admitted that much of this stemmed from being scolded as a boy when caught masturbating. Since then, pleasure and shame had been fused in his mind. "I still love my wife," he said, "but I no longer know how to be a man for her." That shame is not unique to Vikram. It is a cultural legacy quietly impacting the quality of life for millions of men across South Asia. But here's the good news. It can be healed, not with medication, but with understanding and self-compassion. When a man dares to face his feelings, when he realizes that his body is not to blame and that his desires are not dirty, his cortisol levels drop, his nervous system calms. Testosterone begins to rebalance. He starts to reconnect with his body, and most remarkably, his confidence begins to return. Small shifts in self-perception can spark profound physiological change. Masturbation, when done with self-respect, is not harmful. It can be a form of self-care, a quiet way to remind your body that it is still alive, still capable of pleasure, still worthy of love. But to reach that place, one must peel away the layers of shame. One must rewrite the internal script from "I am weak for doing this" to "I am human and I deserve kindness even from myself." And so, in cities like Bengaluru and Delhi, modern therapy centers have started offering sexual wellness counseling for seniors, a hopeful sign in a society still learning to embrace these conversations. But the biggest revolution doesn't come from outside. It begins within each man who is willing to forgive himself and release the invisible burden he's carried for decades. You don't need to be ashamed for wanting to feel alive. You just need to learn how to feel again without punishing yourself for it. That's not weakness. That's the first step of becoming a man again, fully, freely, and with the peaceful strength that you always deserved but were taught to deny. And now, perhaps for the first time, it's time to believe you are worthy, and you always were. In India, as the sun begins its descent in the western sky and the temple bells echo softly from the riverbanks of the Ganges, there's a quiet signal that the day is winding down, and the body, too, is entering a natural state of recovery. It is during this sacred window, typically between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m., that elderly men, especially those over 60, find the most ideal and health-supportive time to engage in intimate acts with themselves. Not in the rushed, dehydrated hours of early morning when the body is still groggy and vulnerable, but in the calm of early evening when the heart is no longer burdened by the pressures of the day and the mind has softened from its battles. According to geriatricians and male health specialists at the Institute of Traditional Medicine in Delhi, this time frame allows the body's physiological functions to stabilize. After a full day of nourishment, hydration, and movement, the body's energy reserves are replenished, blood pressure is regulated, and blood sugar levels are more balanced. Perhaps most importantly, testosterone, the key hormone behind male desire and vitality, naturally begins to rise again in the late afternoon. While this rhythm often goes unnoticed in the young, for older men, particularly in India, where early dinners and vegetarian lifestyles are common, it presents a golden window to reconnect with the self without putting unnecessary strain on the body. But it's not just the physical body that benefits. There's something deeply restorative on a spiritual and emotional level as well. Evening time is when many Indian fathers and grandfathers finally set aside their family duties and allow themselves a moment of rest. The noise quiets, the pace slows. The mind settles like the meditative stillness found in yoga. And if a man honors his body in this stillness, without guilt or haste, then self-pleasure becomes more than just a physical release. It becomes a form of sacred ritual, a quiet ceremony of healing rooted in the ancient purifying practices of Ayurveda. One physician in Bangalore shared the story of an elderly patient, a retired philosophy professor who had been suffering from high blood pressure and erectile dysfunction. Simply by shifting his self-pleasure routine from the early morning to the early evening, after meditation and herbal tea, his vitality noticeably improved within weeks. "I no longer feel guilty," the professor said. "I feel like a man who has learned how to honor himself." And time, it turns out, is more than a way to measure the day. It can be medicine. For older men in India and around the world, choosing the right time is not just about avoiding risk. It's about reclaiming a lost sensation, the peace of touching one's own body with reverence, the quiet joy of being alive, and the gentle power of coming home to oneself.